There is something it is like to be a bat, or indeed any sentient creature, that science may never be able to fully articulate. These words, spoken by philosopher Thomas Nagel in 1974, would shake the foundations of how we think about consciousness itself. But what does a bat have to do with understanding the human mind? Everything, it turns out. Imagine trying to explain color to someone who has never seen, or trying to describe what chocolate tastes like to someone who has never tasted anything sweet. This is the heart of Thomas Nagel's revolutionary insight. There are experiences so deeply personal, so utterly subjective, that no amount of objective scientific description can fully capture them. Born in 1937, Thomas Nagel emerged as one of the most provocative philosophical voices of the 20th century. Teaching at institutions like Princeton and New York University, he dedicated his career to exploring the seemingly impossible, how to reconcile our inner, subjective experiences with the cold, objective facts of the physical world. Consciousness is what makes the mind-body problem really intractable, he observed. Nagel wasn't content to simply identify problems. He wanted us to confront them head-on, to wrestle with the uncomfortable truth that some aspects of reality might forever elude our scientific grasp. In his groundbreaking 1974 essay, What Is It Like to Be a Bat?, Nagel posed a deceptively simple question that philosophers are still debating today. Bats navigate the world through echolocation, bouncing sound waves off objects to see their environment. We can measure these sound waves. We can map the neural pathways in a bat's brain. We can describe in excruciating detail every physical process involved. But here's the thing. We will never know what it actually feels like to experience the world as a bat does. We are solitary creatures, and we always will be. Subjective experience cannot be reduced to objective phenomena, Nagel insisted. This wasn't pessimism. It was recognition of a fundamental truth about consciousness. He pressed further, arguing that no description of a situation is complete without an acknowledgement of the mental states of the person experiencing it. Every scientific paper, every objective analysis, every attempt to describe reality from a purely third-person perspective is, according to Nagel, fundamentally incomplete. Why? Because the problem is not just that we have beliefs, desires, and emotions. It is that we are aware of having them. It's this self-awareness, this inner life, that makes consciousness so mysterious and so resistant to purely physical explanation. In 1986, Nagel published what many consider his masterpiece, The View from Nowhere. The title itself is profound. It asks whether it's even possible to achieve a truly objective perspective, one untainted by our subjective human experience. His answer? It's complicated. Objectivity is both the ideal of science and a way of understanding our own position as just another part of the world, he wrote. Science strives for objectivity, and rightly so. Yet, a theory that makes a very big deal of objectivity risks ignoring the most basic elements of human experience: subjective consciousness. Nagel didn't want us to abandon objectivity. Rather, he showed us that the subjective and the objective standpoints are inherently opposed, and any attempt to merge them may fail to accommodate what we are as human beings. We need both perspectives, even though they can never be fully reconciled. He reminded us that philosophy reveals the tension between our subjective lives and the objective world we are trying to understand. This tension isn't a flaw in our thinking. It's woven into the fabric of reality. To demand complete objectivity would be to remove oneself from the human condition, Nagel warned. More provocatively, In philosophy, it is impossible to ignore our existence as human beings within the space we attempt to describe. Yet, he also recognized something beautiful in this limitation. The realization of one's place within the context of a broader reality is both a strength and limitation of philosophy. We are both observers of the universe and part of it, a paradox we must learn to embrace. Now, you might think Nagel was anti-science. Far from it. What he challenged was a certain overconfidence, a belief that physical science could, in principle, explain absolutely everything. Science must recognize its own limitations. Consciousness cannot be made sense of purely by physicalism, he declared. This was particularly evident in his controversial 2012 book, Mind and Cosmos, where he stated, "The explanation of consciousness, reason, and value cannot simply be reduced to biological facts alone." He wasn't denying evolution or dismissing biology. Instead, he was saying that, without consciousness, it is difficult to see what it would be for there to be a world at all. Consciousness isn't just another phenomenon to be explained. It's the very condition that makes explanation possible. As he eloquently put it, each of our lives is a part of the lengthy process of the universe, gradually waking up and becoming aware of itself. Think about the poetry in that statement. We're not just passive observers of a dead universe. We're the universe experiencing itself. Nagel maintained that there are things about the nature of subjective experience that may forever remain beyond the reach of physical explanation. This wasn't an argument for mysticism, but rather a call for intellectual humility. Nagel's insights about subjectivity and objectivity weren't limited to consciousness. They extended into ethics and political philosophy, where he grappled with one of humanity's most persistent challenges: how to balance our personal commitments with universal moral principles. Our actions are sometimes motivated by impartial reasons, and sometimes by partial ones, reasons that relate specifically to the people, causes, or institutions we care about, he observed in his 1991 work, Equality and Partiality. This might seem obvious, but Nagel saw a deep philosophical puzzle here. We have special obligations to our families, friends, and communities, yet we also feel the pull of universal moral principles. How do we navigate this tension? He offered a characteristically nuanced answer. Ethical principles derive their content and their authority from considerations of fairness and the ability to stand in someone else's shoes. Morality isn't just about following rules, it's about perspective-taking, about recognizing others as beings with their own inner lives. He argued that moral realism depends on the objective status of ethical norms as binding for all rational agents, while also acknowledging that I advocate a pluralistic approach to ethics because we live in a pluralistic world. There's no single formula that can solve all moral dilemmas. As Nagel wrote, the ethics of political institutions must be weighed against impartial considerations of justice. We need structures that balance competing values, a perpetual challenge for any society. Perhaps nowhere is Nagel more relatable than in his reflections on life's absurdity. Life may be not only meaningless, but absurd, he acknowledged. But before you spiral into existential despair, consider this. Absurdity is one of the most human things about us, a manifestation of our most advanced and interesting characteristics. We're creatures who can step back from our lives, examine them from a cosmic perspective, and realize how tiny and insignificant we are. Yet we continue to care deeply about our daily concerns, our relationships, our projects. This disconnect is absurd, but it's also what makes us human. Life is absurd, But absurdity is a condition worth reflecting upon rather than rejecting outright, Nagel suggested. The recognition of absurdity doesn't have to paralyze us. It can liberate us. He described human existence with striking honesty. The point is to live one's life in the full complexity of what one is, which is something much darker, more contradictory, more of a maelstrom of impulses and passions, of cruelty, ecstasy, and madness than is apparent to the civilized being who glides on the surface and fits smoothly into the world. Nagel's philosophy doesn't offer easy answers. Instead, it offers something more valuable, the right questions. In arguing for the limits of objectivity, one is arguing for the irreplaceable value of the subjective perspective. His work reminds us that subjective awareness is a necessary component of an organism's experience of the world, and that I maintain that consciousness has an irreducibly subjective component. These aren't just abstract philosophical claims, they're insights about what makes your life uniquely yours. Realism and skepticism in epistemology must be taken seriously, not because they can lead to certainty, but because they challenge our assumptions. Philosophy isn't about reaching a final destination, it's about the journey of questioning. As he wisely observed, philosophy is the childhood of the intellect, and a culture that tries to skip it will never grow up. We need these fundamental questions, these explorations of consciousness and meaning, to understand what it means to be human. Human reasoning goes astray, but this does not make us any less human, for error is a part of the human condition. We're imperfect, limited creatures trying to understand an infinite universe. But in that very attempt lies our nobility. Thomas Nagel's legacy is a reminder that some mysteries are worth preserving. Not every question needs an answer. Sometimes the most profound wisdom lies in recognizing the boundaries of our knowledge and celebrating the irreducible richness of subjective experience that makes each of us who we are. After all, there is a sense in which moral skepticism and moral realism are not alternatives, but partners in a broader inquiry into ethical life. The journey matters more than the destination. And what a remarkable journey it is to be conscious, to question, and to wonder. What is it like to be you? I'm grateful for the moments shared in discourse. May our paths cross again in the fullness of time.